rise to the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Almighty and everlasting God, who presides over all things in heaven and earth, come and preside over these deliberations so that those that make the decisions may be guided by your wisdom.
All right, Jim.
Good afternoon and welcome to today's combined session of City Council. The first part of the meeting is the work session. There will be no public comment at this time, so if the public could please hold your calls until the regular session. First item on the agenda, and the only item for council's agenda, is an ordinance of the City of Wilkes-Barre establishing a citizen police review board. Comments or questions? Council?
Not at this time, thank you, sir.
Okay. And that's it for council's agenda. Mayor Brown?
Thank you, Jim. Okay. I'd like to ask City Council to please authorize the proper city officials to sign any and all necessary documents related to the awarding of the contract to the lowest responsible bidder for the demolition of 773 South Franklin Street, also known as the Silk Mill. The payment related hereto was to be made from the OECD budget. Also, proper city officials to sign any and all necessary documents related to the awarding of the contract to the lowest bidder for the demolition of 21/23 Walnut Street. Payment also from the OECD budget. Authorizing proper city officials to sign any and all documents related to the awarding of the contract to the lowest responsible bidder for the demolition of 209, 211, 213 East Northampton Street. Also, rescinding resolution R0023-20 dated March 12, 2020 related to the purchase of the new vacuum leaf machine. Whereas the local match for the purchase of the new leaf vacuum machine will be paid for through the city's liquid fuels budget. Authorizing the proper city officials to enter into a lease purchase agreement for Schwartz A7 Tornado Street Sweeper in the amount of $266,458. The purchase will be funded through the liquid fuels budget. Also, supporting the Luzerne County Flood Protection Authority's grant application for an accelerated levee system evaluation project. Authorizing the mayor, City of Wilkes-Barre, to submit application for the traffic signal approval to the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation to sign the application on behalf of the municipality, and that's in the East End Center. Authorizing the mayor, City of Wilkes-Barre, to submit an application for traffic signal approval to the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation to sign the application on behalf of the municipality. That's on the corner of Courtright, North River Streets. Okay. Requesting a blight remediation program grant of $300,000 from the Commonwealth Financing Authority of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to be used for the City of Wilkes-Barre's blight remediation project. Also designated Mayor George C. Brown and Controller Darren Snyder as the officials to execute all documents and agreements between the City of Wilkes-Barre and the Commonwealth Finance Authority to facilitate and assist in obtaining the requested grant along with any and all other project documents related to the City of Wilkes-Barre's blight remediation project. City agrees to pay the required 10% local cash match of the total project cost. Requesting a Greenway Trails and Recreation Program grant of $250,000 from the Commonwealth Pennsylvania Financing Authority to be used for public park improvement project. Also that the applicant does hereby designate Mayor George C. Brown and Controller Darren Snyder as the officials to execute all documents and agreements between the City of Wilkes-Barre and the Commonwealth Finance Authority to facilitate and assist in obtaining the requested grant along with any and all project documents related to the City of Wilkes-Barre's blight remediation project. The city agrees to pay the required 15% local cash match of the total project cost. Authorizing the proper city officials to purchase 10 Apex 4000 PD version W/RSM radios and portable programming for each unit at a total purchase price of $33,798.60. The purchase be made using Department of Justice asset forfeiture funds and paid out of the city's general federal grants account. Authorizing the proper city officials to enter into an agreement with Whitmer Public Safety Group, 104 Independence Way, Coatesville, PA 19320, for the purchase of fire, turnout gear, and miscellaneous fire equipment in the amount of $47,431. Payment will come from the Office of Economic and Community Development. Authorizing the proper city officials to take any and all necessary actions to sell 269-271 East Northampton Street to Edwin Pashinsky and Janet Ackery, or their respective designees, for a purchase price of $1,200. Authorizing the proper city officials to enter into an agreement in the amount of $113,044 with the Pennsylvania Department of Health to provide immunization services. You guys still with me? Okay. Authorizing the proper city officials to enter into an agreement in the amount of $181,382 with the Pennsylvania Department of Health to provide public health preparedness services. Authorizing the proper city officials to enter into an agreement in the amount of $556,116 with the Pennsylvania Department of Health to provide opioid and substance abuse prevention. Authorizing the proper city officials to enter into an agreement in the amount of $693,750 with the Pennsylvania Department of Health to provide services for nutrition, physical activity, and injury prevention. Requesting appropriate state officials, elected officials, and the Wolf administration to proceed immediately to repeal Act 43 fireworks. And authorizing the proper city officials to accept the Joyce Insurance Group insurance package related to property, equipment, inline, marine, boiler, machinery, general liability, business, auto, fidelity, bond, crime, public officials, law enforcement, firefighters, professional fiduciary, cyber liability, and general liability, and professional liability for the health department, and to sign any and all necessary documents in security name.
Mayor, if I may, one question for clarification. Going back to the Greenway Trails and Recreation Program grant of $250,000 to be used for a public park improvements, do you have specifics on the park, or is that in general? I am so sorry. There is a resolution on here, and they're not numbered. It has to do with the Greenway Trails and Recreation Program grant from the Commonwealth Financing Authority to be used for a public park improvement. I don't know if there's a specific park in mind or what that project might be.
We're evaluating where that can be used to best the city, to benefit the city the best.
Okay.
So we'll be holding several meetings on that. But the nice thing is this funding is available to the city with a very small match, and we can really do a lot of improvements with that amount of money. So it's a win-win for the city.
Okay, thank you, sir. Questions? On any of those? Quite a few. Okay, huh? All right, Jim. Okay. We're going to council presentations. All right, thank you, sir. Okay, Mr. Belisco, anything for us this evening?
I do, but Charlie, I had a list for you, actual list, but I left it in my car. So I forgot to bring it in.
Email it to me as you usually do.
All right. That's all.
Okay, Mrs. McBride.
I do have a statement that I would like to read. I want to start by saying this. I have no doubt that each of us want what's best for our city. My feelings on police reform do not diminish the respect that I have for our mayor, the administration, my colleagues, and yes, good police officers. The goal of a Citizens Review Board is simple: to give civilians a proper avenue to file allegations of misconduct and to provide a source of accountability. The ordinance establishing the board is not perfect, but I am prepared to improve it as much as possible moving forward. Sadly, I am also prepared for this ordinance not to pass. This ordinance is not an attack on the police, and good police officers should not fear oversight. I understand that Chief Coffey is trying his best to manage the department. This is not about Chief Coffey or his leadership skills. This is about putting proper measures in place to help ensure that, frankly, someone's not killed. In fact, this was addressed in the 2018 Pennsylvania Chiefs of Police Association report. The report stated that the internal review system is inefficient. The residents of this city paid for this report, and they deserve better than what the current system is giving them. They deserve the recommendations in the report to be given serious consideration. I ask you this: would you trust a system that has been built against you from the beginning? Most people do not have the money to afford an attorney for a serious complaint against an officer. And frankly, people are afraid to file complaints because of how much power some unions and police officers are given. People don't trust the DA's office is going to give fair weight to a citizen's complaint against an officer. It's time to give power to the people. Not politicians, not council, not the mayor, the people. The people pay our salaries. The people pay for our police officers. The people deal with the consequences of a system built against them, and the people deserve better than what we are giving them. I'll leave you with this thought. For those who did not watch the video, when George Floyd was having the life strangled out of him, he used one of his last breaths to call out for his mama, who passed away 2 years earlier. In his last moments, he believed that his mother would save him. As a mother myself, that gutted me. But it also forced me to check my own privilege. My son is a white boy. In fact, he's so white that when he was born, the NICU team was called in because they thought his pale skin meant that he was lacking oxygen, only to have a nurse say that he's perfectly healthy, he's just a very white baby. None of us up here will ever know the anguish that a mother to black or brown children goes through on a daily basis. We will never know the fear and anxiety they feel when their black and brown children walk out the front door. We will never know the feeling of worry deep in their gut when their child is pulled over by a police officer. We will never know what it feels like to try to explain to our child how to show their hands to the police so they don't get shot. That, my white colleagues, is an enormous privilege. And it's up to all of us to do whatever we can to ensure that this does not happen in our community. If we can help ensure that at least one life in the city is safe, and one more mother doesn't have to cry out in anguish and feel the need to burn down our cities, then why are we not doing that? This is not a moment, this is a movement, and I will continue to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else while you have the floor?
That's all, thank you.
That's all, thank you. Mr. Marconi?
I just want to thank Mayor Brown for riding with me throughout the district yesterday. I think I had him on overtime. I was telling him. It was very, very productive. I'm very pleased to hear about the street sweeper here. That is outstanding. Very good news for the city. I just want to bring up the Washington Street Bridge again to the administration. I just want to look at that. I don't want that falling through the cracks here. With the COVID. We certainly don't want that to slip away. And that's about all I have.
Okay. Mr. Brooks?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to commend my colleague Beth Gilbert McBride on her heartfelt statement that she made. I know your heart and soul is poured into this, and your brain as well, and it shows. I also too want to thank the mayor for driving around Rolling Mill Hill. We went up and down just about every single street and created a legal size pad full of things to do, and I'm very appreciative that many potholes have been fixed already since we went around. I think it was 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
And things are already moving, and really appreciate it. And I thought it was a great way for the mayor also to get and see people, because every other block or so we would get out of the car and talk to people who had problems with their neighbors and things with the city. So it was extremely productive, and I hope we do it. We want to do it annually.
Tony,
It'd be nice to do it once a month.
I'll
but-
commit to annually. How's that sound?
Sounds good. I also want to commend the mayor also and thank Linda Josephs from the Rolling Mill Hill Residents Association for spearheading a petition, thanking Mary Ellen Jones from the Wilkes-Barre Crime Watch, who is distributing the petition to other neighborhood groups in the city, and also thank the mayor for providing residents with a letter that residents could also sign and send to our state representatives and state senators in Harrisburg. Again, and I know I've talked about this for the last 4 meetings about fireworks, it just pains me over and over again that the lack of respect that somebody could have for their neighbor, it just boggles my mind. And as somebody who is quite religious and truly believes in loving thy neighbor, I just don't understand how people can't love the autistic children that lives next door, or love that pet that lives next door to them, or love the veteran that lives next door to them, or an elderly person who is just scared out of their wits and has to hide underneath the bed. I know I'm broken record on it, but I just really wish the citizens of Wilkes-Barre would be very respectful of their neighbor. That's all we're asking for, love and respect, and I can't see why that is so hard. And I'm really glad that community organizations and the mayor have stepped up to lead this drive, and I've been told by our fire chief that other cities around the Commonwealth are taking our lead, and that's a testament to you, Mr. Brown, for that, and that's great to hear that Wilkes-Barre could be in a driving seat for that. And then I just have a question for Butch that has come up to me from some of my constituents. After the utility companies do their work and they pave the street, in one example, the next day, another utility came out with yellow markings and marked up a newly paved street that led the residents to believe that street's gonna get tore up yet again when it just got paved. And then I'll notice, one, I don't know the colors, so if you can explain what blue, red, and yellow is the 3 colors I seem to see all the time. I could guess one is gas, electricity, water, or something like that. But is there a way that the utility companies can report to you, and then you can tell us, what's going on those streets? Because obviously we're getting phone calls, and I don't have an answer for them. And secondly, is it remotely possible that when they do mark up the streets and the sidewalks, that it's done just a day or 2 before they're actually going to dig into the ground? So for example, on North Franklin Street, there's red and blue, I think yellow, and it's been there for months and months and months, all over the sidewalk, all over the street, and it's like graffiti, on our street. Just wondering, is there a way we can work with utility companies that they won't have the paint there as much, and a communication process that they can let us know what's going on those streets?
I can answer this question. We get daily, we get hundreds of email transactions from Pennsylvania One Call. All utilities are required to notify the city of Wilkes-Barre whenever they're doing any kind of excavation or potential excavation in the city. Those come in forms of faxes or emails. We keep them.
Right.
It would take forever to get them all out to the public, because it's one person. That's a one-person job. As a matter of fact, we just had a recent conversation with Mayor Charlie. We posted a job for a paved cut monitor,
right,
and that would be part of that person's job. The utility companies are required to mark their facilities in lieu of someone excavating. Let's say the city of Wilkes-Barre want to go out and clean a catch basin or repair a catch basin. We are required to call this one call number. They in turn call power companies, gas company, water company, cable company, telecommunication companies, and there's so many of them anymore.
Right.
That's the marks that you see. They're required to mark. They have a 3 to 5 day window, unless it's an emergency. They do it in 24 hours. That paint is supposed to be water soluble. In many cases, it stays for years.
Yeah.
PPNO is notorious for the red mark. Red is power, green is communication, yellow is gas, blue is water. And there's a new color now, pink, I believe, is telecommunication. So you'll see them marked everywhere, so people know where the facilities are when they're digging. In an old city like Wilkes-Barre, the infrastructure is old, and it's got to be replaced and repaired more frequently than in other cities. And in the downtown, where from North to South Street everything is underground, it's explain the situations where, let's say an engineering company's gonna design something very complex, Hotel Sterling, South Main Street. The engineer is required to call the same utility companies, through the PA one call, so they come out and mark their facilities so a designer knows where they are, so they don't disturb them in any way. It is a problem, it's been a problem for years. I don't know how best we can approach this. We'll see if we can reach out to the PA one call system. It's a state law that this happens, this occurs.
Right.
However, I do think they overmark, and I think PPL is notorious for that. I get it, I mean, I don't want if I'm work for the power company, I wanted the power damaged in any way.
Right.
It's an ongoing issue, but it's something we'll have to do a better job dealing with, and we'll try to share as much of that information with as we can.
Great, okay. Thank you, sir. No more questions?
Mr. Brooks?
Yes, sir.
Also, the pave cut position that Mr. Friday talked about will be a revenue stream for us, because when we looked at the job, it's gonna actually create revenue more than salary and benefits would cost for the position. But it's also gonna be someone that's gonna go back when the pavement has been repaved or repatched, and they will be working with the utility company's contractor, ensuring that it's done properly. We have a lot that come back and lift out. We just repaired one on Ross Street. That was one of the things you pointed out in our tour. Most of those, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Freddy, are from utility company repairs or dig-ups. So this person will be responsible for getting back with that contractor and saying, it's gotta be fixed the right way. But it's also revenue producing. It won't cost us. It'll actually create revenue.
Good, that's good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. I wanted to start by thanking the mayor, Butch, Hank Radulski, for putting all this together. Unfortunately, it didn't work out the way we anticipated as far as this evening's meeting is concerned, due to the last minute directive from the governor as far as social distancing and so on and so forth. I know that you put a lot of work into it, a lot of thought, making sure that everything is compliant, and we were very comfortable to proceed, although we're gonna have a limited number of people in attendance today, but it is nice that we're all actually sitting here ourselves tonight for the first time in several months, so it's great to see all you guys rather than looking at a video monitor. But again, thank you, and hopefully we can move forward with that in the near future and get not only us back in this room, but also all of our citizens and residents that want to attend a meeting and have something to say in person. But kind of a little bit of a surprise, but we'll get through it. So thank you again for your hard work, and hopefully it'll work out for us in the future. Again, as Mr. Marconia mentioned, thank you to the mayor for making the tour with us. He did go around with the council members to their respective districts, and it kind of works out well when you can point out something specifically to the mayor in person and say, this is what I've been talking about, or this is what it's all about. And it's kind of fast tracks some concerns that we have, that we've been hearing about. And specifically also the Pine Ridge development. I was up there today and I couldn't believe the difference. Thank you, Butch. I know that you were instrumental in getting that done along with the mayor. But it is so much cleaner and so much more viable for development. And I just hope that it does actually work. That it looks like, it doesn't look like the land forgotten, and it looks like a place where somebody may want to build a new home. There's so many beautiful homes up there right now, and the residents are thrilled with it. And I just hope that it just sparks a little bit of interest in it. It's a great place to live, a great location, and some wonderful people there. So thank you for all you've done there. It's hard to believe that cutting grass and weeds makes that much of a difference in people's lives, but they are very, very appreciative. So they wanted me to pass that along. Now, if you'll indulge with me for a few minutes, I just wanted to make a few comments on the issue that's before us tonight, and has to do with the Citizen Police Review Board ordinance. But before I begin, just allow me to provide a little bit of overview on my background. It's an area that I have a little bit of expertise in. I have 27 years of law enforcement experience with the City Police Department. I'm a graduate of the Pennsylvania State Police Municipal Police Academy, the FBI National Academy in Quantico, Virginia. I'm a board member for the Municipal Police Officers Education and Training Commission, responsible for training and certification of over 25,000 municipal police officers in the Commonwealth. A member of the PA Chiefs of Police Association, other police associations, and a legislative committee member of the Pennsylvania Municipal League. As a former police officer with the city, I served through all of the ranks, finally ending up as police chief. And during my years as supervisor and department administrator, there were numerous times that I had to investigate complaints involving police officers under my command and subsequent discipline, including warnings, suspensions, demotions, and termination, along with my involvement in contract negotiations, arbitrations, and grievances, all without a civilian review board. As was just mentioned a few minutes ago, the department did undergo the council-approved comprehensive assessment by the Pennsylvania Chiefs of Police Association, which resulted in a change of leadership and numerous recommendations to move the department forward. The dozens of recommendations that we've all seen included increased training in certain areas and a move towards department accreditation, which is already in process under Chief Coffey. Nowhere in this assessment does it specifically recommend a civilian review board or anything similar to that. In Pennsylvania, there are over 1,000 municipal law enforcement agencies. That's hard to believe, but there are over 1,000 in this Commonwealth, and approximately 25,000 state certified police officers. There are several police reform bills that were just passed and several more to come through the state senate to the governor's office, all aimed at improving police training and reducing deadly force incidents with an emphasis on restoring public confidence and relations within our communities, including Wilkes-Barre. They do include more thorough background checks, a central database of law enforcement officers who have demonstrated documented patterns of excessive force or other misconduct. Another Senate bill, which was just approved, requires specialized training in de-escalation, use of force, and interacting with individuals of diverse backgrounds. Another bill that just passed requires standardized use of force policies and training, take care of the alleged chokeholds and all those other concerns that we do have, including reporting requirements to MOPEC and the state police for non-compliance. There are penalties for this. The governor's office is also providing specific assistance in the area of training and certification reviews, along with a statewide database of disciplinary actions against police officers available to all agencies as part of their hiring background checks. As you can see, and as you've most likely read, there is extensive work being done in police reform at the state and federal levels. And in my professional opinion, this is where we need to focus, and not on the local level by creating an investigatory review board where the actions of our Wilkes-Barre police officers are subject to review at any time for any reason. Actually, in Luzerne County alone, there are approximately 50 police departments. I don't know of any others that have a civilian review board in place. I actually don't know of any in this part of the state, in the eastern part of the state. Most civilian review boards that do exist in the United States came about as a result of a serious violation of police conduct, which has not been the case in our city. They also end up tangled in lawsuits, grievances, and other issues, making them largely ineffective and costly. There are many options for individuals who feel they may not have been treated fairly or equally by law enforcement. Our police officers deserve our utmost support and appreciation for all they do to keep us safe every day. I learn of police officers across this country being killed in the line of duty, rarely making national news. I imagine because some think it's part of their job. This is a profession unlike any other where a police officer can be called on a moment's notice to save a life, take a life, or even give their own life without having to be concerned about facing a subsequent review board. It's time to show our faith and trust in the department and its leadership and work together to keep our city safe for all of us. A civilian review board is not going to help us accomplish that. The creation of a Wilkes-Barre Civilian Review Board, in my opinion, would be an insult to all the men and women of our police department. I do, however, support a police advisory board which works with the police in a positive, proactive manner in an ongoing basis to improve police relations on an ongoing basis. Right now, we have a lot of things going on in the police reform world. We're certainly, you've all heard about the governor's initiatives, the mayor's police citizens advisory board, and the department's own corrective actions. And I don't even like to use the word corrective, the department's proactive actions that it has been taking in striving towards accreditation. I feel that combination of reforms that are going on at the local level here, coupled with the state and federal reforms, is where we need to be focused. Thank you for listening, and I certainly appreciate your indulgence. And that is all that I have, Mr. Ryan. Thank you, sir. Questions on any of that? Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Before we take a brief break to change the audio recorders, et cetera, does any council member wish to have any of the 20 proposed resolutions voted on separately tonight? Or if there are no objections, by unanimous consent, may they be voted on as a consent agenda? Are there any objections?
I don't see any.
Okay, then it will be carried over to a consent agenda of all 20 resolutions at the regular session coming up. Okay, so we'll just take a
Break for a
couple
minute.
minutes.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, the work session is concluded. Ready to go? Yep. Wow, fast. Rise to the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Almighty and everlasting God, who presides over all things in heaven and earth, come and preside over these deliberations so that those that make the decisions may be guided by your wisdom.
Thank you. Roll call, please, Mr. Ryan.
Mr. Belusco.
Here.
Mr. Marconi.
Here.
Mrs. McBride.
Present.
Mr. Brooks.
Here.
And Mr. Barrett.
Here.
Also in attendance tonight is Mayor George C. Brown, Administrator Charles McCormick, Assistant City Attorney Maureen Collins, Deputy Administrator and Director of Operations Butch Frotty, IT Director Frank Hirschberger, Director of Health Services Hank Radulski, Assistant City Clerk Catherine Payne, and Administrative Assistant Lisa Sanfilippo. We will now proceed with the regular session of council, which is the second part of tonight's meeting. During this meeting, there will be public comment on pending legislation which is prior to council's voting, and the phone line will be open. After the voting is complete, council will open the phone line again for the public's general comments. Please wait for the announcement to be made that the phone lines are open. Okay, first we'll go through the comments that were emailed in. We have two of them related to pending legislation. I'll read the first one, which is the address to Wilkes-Barre City Council, Thursday, July 16, 2020. To the Honorable Mayor George C. Brown and members of City Council, I bid you greetings on behalf of the Wilkes-Barre NAACP. Wilkes-Barre NAACP comes here tonight to express their endorsement of the ordinance that is proposed by Councilwoman Beth Gilbert McBride as it pertains to the Citizens Police Review Board. As ordinance, by the way, I think it's a typo. An ordinance, by the way, that has bipartisan support. Scarcity in these times of tribal divisions. Mayor Brown, I've heard you at a recent meeting express your love for the city of Wilkes-Barre, a city of which you were born and raised. Even though my wife and I relocated to the city more than 30 years ago, my wife and I now call Wilkes-Barre our home. My son's most influential years of development were right here in the city of Wilkes-Barre. When I first relocated here, I was told by some that this city was 20 years behind the civil rights movement. However, I wish to relocate my family here anyway. When I relocated them, I wanted to give something back to the community So I got involved with my son's mini football team, the South Wilkes-Barre Mohawks, and because of my dedication and commitment, I became part of the coaching staff and eventually the president of the Mini Mohawk organization, which I served faithfully until being elected president of the Wilkes-Barre NAACP at the end of 1996. I served in that capacity for 18 consecutive years till I retired in 2014. However, I returned in 2019 and with the assistance of our current leadership team to reestablish the visibility of the Wilkes-Barre NAACP in northeastern Pennsylvania. However, Mayor Brown, I'm quite sure neither you nor I could have imagined what we would be confronting in the year 2020. A global pandemic that would rob the world of nearly half dozen lives and a quarter of that number right here in the United States of America. In addition, we are facing staggering unemployment and trillions of dollars have been spent on stimulus packages. However, if that isn't enough, we've seen the video murder of Ahmed Abri in February, who was hunted down like a deer while peacefully jogging in a predominantly white neighborhood in Brunswick, Georgia. And then we heard about the brutal death of Breonna Taylor, 8 times shooting death of Breonna Taylor 8 times by Louisville, Kentucky police officers while initiating a no-knock warrant while sleeping in her own bed in her own apartment. Then to cap it off, after again we witnessed on videotape for 8 minutes and 46 seconds the modern-day lynching of an unarmed black man while in the custody of 4 Minneapolis, Minnesota members of law enforcement. And if that wasn't enough, we seen an elderly white man pushed to the ground and laid there bleeding from his ear as the city of Buffalo, New York policemen walked right by him. The protest we've seen is more than the use of excessive force by members of law enforcement. It goes deeper and points to systemic racism that has plagued our country for more than 400 years. In the year of 2020, right here in the city of Wilkes-Barre, we've seen protests of historical proportions, but not only in Wilkes-Barre, but throughout the world. However, the difference this time is that the protests were not only by African Americans, but our white brothers and sisters and other ethnic groups have joined us in our protests and marches shouting, "Black Lives Matter." In the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., they've come to realize that their destiny is inextricably bound to our destiny and that their freedom is inextricably bound to our freedom. Many have said they have not seen anything like this since the Civil Rights Movement. Yes, we're here tonight to support this ordinance, but police reform goes far beyond this narrow focus on police misconduct. I do believe the majority of police here in the city of Wilkes-Barre are good, but it's that small percentage, and yes, they are here in Wilkes-Barre too. So Wilkes-Barre, what you have failed to do, the governor has done for you by enacting 2 bills regarding police reform. Now, they don't go far enough, but at least it's a start. These bills when enacted, will prevent a bad cop from traveling from one police department to another if properly enforced. However, reform doesn't stop there, and this is only the beginning. By all means, I support unions and believe they played an integral part in advancing the middle class. However, no union should shield a person that demonstrates implicit or explicit racial bias, especially when that bias is against the very people who contribute to their salary. Now, let me say this about the leadership of the city of Wilkes-Barre, which is mostly Democratic. It's your conservative leadership that's holding the city back from its true potential. As I close, I would just like to say how many generations of law-abiding, unarmed black men will have to be worried when being pulled over by members of law enforcement. What type of day they've had, their moral disposition, or whether they may be exhibiting implicit or explicit racial bias. It happened to my father-in-law, it happened with me, and it happened with my son. Enough is enough. This happens again and again because good people such as yourselves sit silently by and do nothing. And that's signed Sincerely, Ronald L. Felton, President, NAACP, Wilkes-Barre Branch, number 2306. Okay, any questions or comments on that? Okay, and next we have a second one. I would like to, it's from Tracy Hughes. I would like to submit the following question for tonight's meeting. Why is the city administration, a few members of the city council, and the police department against the Citizens Police Review Board? If a police officer goes before a Citizens Review Board and the officer has done nothing wrong, then they wouldn't and shouldn't have any worries. There should be no reason to not support this new policy. A Citizens Police Review Board should be totally separate and not include the district attorney's office and other departments within our city. In my opinion, something that is much needed and would help gain trust for all city residents. Thank you, Tracy Hughes, Wilkes-Barre, PA.
Comments, questions on those?
Okay. Okay, so the first item on the agenda is.
Oh, we have Collins, I believe, on this.
Okay, Collins for the pending legislation, sorry.
That's okay. Good evening, your name and address, please?
Your name and address for the record?
Mr. Andrew Jerome White, citizen, Minor Street, Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania.
Go ahead.
Okay. Go ahead, Angel.
Yes. Mr. Andrew, I want to say thank you to Ben for really taking initiative of something that I've been asking for a long time. And I don't want this to be us against the police. I know Mr. Wilkes-Barre said many years of law enforcement, but even yourself has to agree the face of the community has changed by leaps and bounds. And I think the second part of this too, it would give the people more trust in the police and on the route side by side. By no means, when I brought this up, that I would say the police were not doing their job and that they are doing the best they can. But I'm just saying that we have to build trust. And the only way you're going to build trust is people in the community can sit down with the police and the mayor and really discuss the issues that Mr. Felton so greatly set right. And I applaud the mayor also for always being the person of adversity. He's the first one who would ask me to come to his event to bring Spanish community. That's diversity. So in my own, when I was asking for the police commission, it was not to oversee the police and even having their job. It was understanding more of what their job is and what us in the community get off the police. There's a great deal of resources in the community that too often goes untapped, and that goes two ways. I wish community leaders who are now saying diversity is a bigger step when long time the voices were never sounded this loud. So please just consider that when the community can sit down with the police and we can discuss the serious issues we have about diversity, our community must be a better community knowing that we're all working together. Again, I want to work side by side with the police, not oversee them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Giroux. Comments, council? Okay. Wait a few minutes, see if we have any more incoming.
Name and address for the record?
John Hockey, Alden Lane.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay. I'm just calling to support
please. Is the caller there? Hello?
Good afternoon, this is Harlan Lee, Wilkes-Barre.
You get the name, Kathy?
No. Can you repeat your name, please?
Harlan Tabor.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
I just want to say that I am definitely in favor of the Citizens Review Board, but I do acknowledge that there is going to be difficulty in bringing something like this to fruition. And I shared some concerns with the Councilwoman Gilbert McBride. Thank you so much for the bravery to come forward with this piece of legislation. But depending on the actual time commitment, it's going to be very difficult to find a volunteer pool. Parents with children, while they may care about the cause, they just may not have the time to be a part. My normal 9 to 5 is in human resources, and from a human resources perspective, the amount of work required combined with the amount of time that would be required to diligently and thoughtfully respond to complaints, I believe it would be hard to fill without a compensation of some sort. So I'm not sure of how compensation could be worked out, but I do believe that that would be a helpful incentive to bring the top-notch people to this spot. And as you have discussed earlier, of course, Governor Wolf did sign a bill that would require law enforcement to be evaluated for PTSD after the use of lethal force, create a database that tracks disciplinary action, and removes consent as a defense of sexual assault that occurs while in police custody. I know it was kind of mentioned earlier, but how does the council feel about this legislation? And how would the council implement or plan to ensure that these practices are adhered to in the city? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Questions, comments?
Well, I asked a question. I'm supportive of Governor Wolf's initiatives. As far as implementation, that would be up to the police department and the administration as to how they will implement them, but I'm supportive of them.
Thank you.
Your name for the record?
Angel Matthews, thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry, first, I would like to thank Beth for her, recommendation of the community review board. And, hey, I'm a citizen about it, it's no disrespect to you, but there was a lot of misbehavior under the employee administration which tarnished the police department, where I can actually say with most certainty, one of my family members had asked upon, reporting police misbehavior was threatened with death. So, I think that we do have a lot of wonderful police officers who do their job, but we do have a small percentage that just do what they want to do. And, I'm not casting doubt of the ability of the police force, but we do need some oversight, because even after that happened with my family member, we did go to the district attorney, and the district attorney actually refused to meet with us. So I'm just asking you guys, please consider saying yes, because we're not asking for this to shine a light on the police department, but because the majority of our officers are very good officers, and they do their jobs, and they deserve every praise. But we do have that small percentage that do need to be held accountable.
Thank you, Angel.
You're welcome.
Comments? Questions? Okay. ahead, Mr. Burden.
Go ahead, Mr. Burry.
Yes, yes, good evening. I'm calling about, parking tickets in the height section of Wilkes-Barre on,
Mr. Burden.
Small Road.
Here it is, Tom.
Hold on, Mr. Burry.
Mr. Burden, right now we're taking comments, questions on pending legislation. We haven't gotten into the general session as far as non-related matters that aren't on the agenda. If you want to call back shortly, or if you're watching us, we'll let you know when it's time to call on those.
Well, I got here too, I got on late, so.
That's okay.
Well, I got on late, I thought you were into that part.
No, sir, not quite yet. You're a little ahead of us. Thank you. A couple more minutes, Jim.
Your name for the record?
Mark Schaefer.
Go ahead, Mr. Schaefer.
Yeah, I'm calling about the Citizens Review Board. I just want to start off by thanking Matt for putting this forward. I don't quite understand why this isn't supported. I talked to a variety of people who have expertise with criminal justice, professors, researchers, and honestly, all of them say that it isn't far enough, that this is too weak, and the fact
just to comment on what Mr. Schaefer had to say. I understand the Citizens Advisory Board doesn't have the power to subpoena, it doesn't have the power to discipline, but it does have the power to make recommendations to the department as to how to proceed with things like no-knock warrants, policy changes, whatever it may be. And with the mayor and the chief giving their full support, and they're non-voting members, but full support in making sure that this is a proactive approach that's going to directly interact with the department on an ongoing basis. It's not going to wait for something to happen. It's going to try and prevent things from happening. And so to say that it's not going to be effective, I think is totally wrong. It's been shown clearly across the country that these do work, because they do tie that gap between the community and the police department. And that's what we're trying to do with all of this. It doesn't mean that they can't make recommendations. The chief and the police union and the mayor, of course, have fully supported the advisory board, 110% behind it. They're welcoming it. They're not looking at it as being something that they don't think is going to work for them. I think it could quickly and effectively, and as one of the callers just said, how long it's going to take to put something else in place, because you have to go through all the other issues that this is not going to have. It's not going to result in unfair labor practices, grievances, lawsuits, or any of those other labor issues that could potentially arise. So I just agree with the mayor's approach on the advisory board. I think it's going to work for the department. It's going to help us move the department forward in better community relations. Thank you.
I just have one comment, just to clear up something. In the Citizens Review Board, there is an advisory component where they do advise the police department on different policies that they would like to see enacted. And of course, the union and police chief would support the advisory board because it doesn't have any power. They've made it very clear from the beginning that they don't want any oversight, so that's why they support that over the review board.
Understood. Thank you.
Your name for the record?
Isaiah McGahey.
Did you get that?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Isaiah McGahey.
Isaiah McGee?
Yes. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, Isaiah McGahey.
You can go ahead.
To the members of council, I thank you all for your time and consideration. But moreover, I thank you for your attention and that you listen not only to myself, but the members of your community, particularly the next generation of voters, voters of color, and those who represent you. My name is Isaiah McGahey, and I come before you today as what I was when I was born, a public man. A man who has spent his 22 years of existence
comments?
State your name for the record.
Sam Troy. Am I on the air?
Yes, you are.
This is the general comment section or the agenda comment?
The
Because I couldn't get through.
agenda comments.
Oh, it's on the agenda yet?
Yes.
Regarding the, proposals, Mr. Mayor? There are two proposals for the police, the, oversight commission, I guess you call it, police oversight commission. I just wanted to weigh on that a little bit, because, am I getting through it or? Hello?
Go ahead, Sam.
Well, I'm certainly in favor of, I think you said it's very strongly both ways. I think it's a very good idea, but I was just going to suggest that, perhaps the city, the mayor and council might get together, if this is feasible, to appoint some sort of ad hoc committee to study the issue a little further. The way I understand it, there's two different proposals on the table, correct? Hasn't been a vote here? So I was just gonna suggest that perhaps the, ad hoc committee made up of maybe one or two councilmen and public citizens, and perhaps a few members of the NAACP, study this issue. No, we'd go and possibly look at, what other communities or other municipalities, like the borough of Groupon just, adopted this, went forward with some sort of, citizen advisory commission. And, it might be good to just take a look at some of the, at what's being hammered out in that community and some of these others before we actually cross the Rubicon and, commit to, something, which we may end up, the city may end up not looking too favorably upon, that's all. That's basically all I wanted to say. I don't know if that's feasible, if there's enough time to, because I just think that sometimes, go ahead with this thing, without too much, discretion, that, what can happen is, perhaps you get, I wouldn't say frequency notion or bias, but sometimes, people won't, you may have a lack of objectivity there, which can kind of undermine the whole, process. That's all I have to say, basically. I just recommend that perhaps you study a little more before it goes forward.
Thank you, Mr. Troy. Comment?
Just for clarification too, Tony and I have met with a number of people regarding the Citizens Review Board, to get different feedback from a lot of different city residents. I've also participated in video calls. Two different attorneys have looked at it, criminologists, researchers, etc. So that is something that has been looked into, but I would be in favor of a separate group dedicated to look into different police reform as well, an ad hoc committee.
While we're waiting, maybe there's a little confusion from some of the callers about what an advisory board actually does. Again, it's mentioned, it is proactive. It's an organization that uses the board, the advisory committee, for advice and input on a wide range of issues. Maybe conducting research, generating new ideas or solutions, and providing recommendation on policies and practices to the department. What it is not is a policy-making body, otherwise the ability of the police executive, the chief, can be greatly compromised. It's not designed, this is not designed to replace the chief, usurp his authority, or take care of his, whatever his disciplinary issues that may arise. And in my mind, when we talk about the Citizens Review Committee, discipline comes to mind right away. The Police Advisory Committee, not a board, is not looking at discipline per se. It's looking at ways to improve the department and to improve community relations and prevent things from occurring that have been occurring across this country. Again, keeping in mind, we talked about the size of this department. We are 7 square miles in this Commonwealth. There's a lot of reform going on all around us, as you all know. We're like 75 police officers out of about 25,000 in the state alone, all certified police officers in the state. I think that it needs to come down from that level and not, I don't think from the bottom up, which is what we're looking at here. Again, just my professional opinion. Another minute or so. Don't want to miss anybody. Any more comments before we move forward? Ryan, I think if you're comfortable, I think we can move forward.
Okay. Certainly, Mr. Chairman. Okay, the next topic on the agenda is the formal voting for the items that have been proposed, resolutions, we're adopting resolutions, the ordinance, the single ordinance that's proposed, and adoption of the minutes of boards and authorities. So there'll be 3 things voting on. One will be, as was determined at the work session, all 20 resolutions have been combined into a consent agenda and will be voted on separate, or be voted on collectively. So we just need a motion, second, and vote.
Motion.
Okay, Tony? Second?
I'll make a second.
Okay. Mr. Belusco?
Yes.
Wait till this goes through.
Mr. Marconi?
Yes.
Mrs. McBride?
Yes.
Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
And Mr. Barrett?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Next is the single ordinance regarding the Police Review Board, proposed by Councilwoman McBride. Motion, second, and vote.
Second.
Motion, who motion?
No, motion?
Oh, you did that? Okay. And Tony,
Yes.
okay, you're the second. Mr. Belusco,
No.
Mr. Marconi,
No.
Mrs. McBride,
Yes.
Mr. Brooks.
Before I vote, I want to say I don't want to think that this is an either or. I appreciate the mayor's advisory commission. I know exactly what he wants, and I support that. I just support all of the above, and also support transparency and accountability is how I look at the advisory board. I support Governor Wolf's reforms as well. So for me, it's all of the above, and I vote yes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Brooks. Mr. Barrett.
No.
Okay, motion fails. And finally, we have approval of the minutes of boards and authorities. Motion, second, and vote.
Motion. Motion.
Mike Belusco, second.
Second.
John.
John? Okay. Mr. Belusco,
Yes.
Mr. Marconi,
Yes.
Mrs. McBride,
Yes.
Mr. Brooks,
Yes.
and Mr. Barrett.
Yes.
Motion passes also. Okay, do you want to take the,
Council member presentations again, go back into them.
mhm.
Okay, Mr. Belisco, anything additional?
I just want to say, I had a conversation with Chief Coffey, and I asked him if there's a resident that has any issues with a police officer, is there an avenue that they could take? And he said, absolutely. And then he went into telling me the details. It's quite extensive. As far as there's a full investigation on it, and it comes down to his advice to give to the mayor as what to do with the officer if need be. So we have that in place. We have the police advisory. This is why I voted no. We didn't need another avenue to go after our police officers, which I feel it is an attack on them. When we don't have an issue in Wilkes-Barre, and there is an avenue for residents, citizens to take. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, sir. Mrs. McBride?
A couple of things. As far as the current process, it's police officers investigating police officers. And that's something that needs to be looked into. That's why I'm in favor of an independent board, because a lot of times they cover up for their own. And I'm not saying that that necessarily happens here, but it happens a lot of other places. And it may very well happen here. I've known people, numerous people have come to me over the past few weeks and said that they have tried to file complaints against police officers and they were turned away by the watch commander. So that's also something else to be concerned about. They were told to go to the DA's office, and the DA's office advised them to get an attorney, and they can't afford an attorney, so what do you do then? You're screwed. If you don't have money in this city, then you can't file a complaint against an officer. As far as the review board goes, it's not a done deal. Myself and members of the public are going to continue to move forward with it, improve it however we can. But to say that we don't have issues in this city is an insult to black members of this community who experience it very often. And we've had a black pastor in this city, a very well-respected man who was literally pulled out of his vehicle. And that's something that we need to be concerned about. No one has died yet in Wilkes-Barre, but I think that if we continue on the path that we're going, it's very possible. And again, that's not a testament to all officers, it's not an attack on officers, but yeah, I am attacking bad officers. They don't deserve to have their jobs if they do things like that. And that's why I proposed the Citizens Review Board, and that's why I will continue to move forward.
Okay. Anything else?
No, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I do have people messaging me saying that they're trying to call in and they can't get through. It's going to voicemail. 570-208-4117.
Yeah. They'd have to ring 4 times for it to go to voicemail, so. Unless you're on the phone. Yeah, unless we were on the phone, we tried.
Okay, Mr. Marconi.
Yes, so I just want to let everyone know too that I spoke with all my colleagues about this situation. I also spoke with the mayor. I also spoke with the chief of police as well. And the chief of police, Coffey, he had told me that he does have policies and procedures in place. He did get in depth with them, which I think they were pretty good. You know, the policies and procedures. I asked him about training. He says that there's extensive training going on. And one thing that I didn't know, which I think is good, he also told me that certain holds are prohibited in the city here, which I didn't know, and I certainly applaud him for that. That is why I had voted no on this. That is all I have.
Okay, Mr. Brooks?
Yes, I just want to say again that my perspective is nowhere do I think this is an attack at all on the police. I certainly do not think it as an insult. You all know I'm married to a law enforcement officer, and in a perfect world, what I hope is that, well, the committee is not going to exist, but if it does exist in the future, that it never has to meet, right? If it's a perfect world, there will be no need for a meeting of this commission. But if it does, there is a mechanism in place. As we know, in the federal government level, you have inspector generals for various departments, and IGs do independent reports, and I just think some independence leads to greater accountability. That leads to the most important thing that we need to do is to build the trust with the African American community. So that's that on that issue. But I'd also wanted to get an update and thank the mayor on the census. I'm glad that you put together a task force on the census, and I was wondering if you possibly might have an update for us or anything.
Tomorrow, I'll have to.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mayor. No other questions, Mr. Chairman.
I'm glad you brought up the Inspector General's involvement in this also, and there's some reform going on in that particular area too, as you obviously know, that there's going to be another component to the Inspector General's office that's going to deal specifically with police issues, as we've been discussing this evening here. And there is recourse, whether it's to the Department of Justice, Civil Rights. There's so many different places that somebody can go if they feel that their civil rights have been violated. But I see more and more coming out of the federal government now on that level as well, making sure that everyone is protected from. And things that happen are absolutely, positively, inexcusably wrong. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I'm not sitting here defending any of that. I just want to be proactive about all this and work from the federal and state levels down to make sure that we have everything in place and avoiding costly litigation, union issues, those types of things. Because when it comes down from above, it becomes law. It becomes law at all the way down to our 75 police officers right through the whole state. So I'm glad you brought that up as a great reminder. Thank you for that. I don't have anything else to add, so we can move forward with public
I just
comment.
have one comment
Oh,
that I
sure.
would like to just say for the record. Just since I've been sitting here and people who are listening to the meeting, I've received 3 messages from people who said that they've tried to file complaints against officers but have been turned away. So I think that at the very least we need to look into that.
You know, it's kind of an interesting, there are places to go that we just mentioned, other than walking in and speaking to the watch commander.
But why would they be turned
You can walk across the
away?
parking lot here and see the mayor's office here, and if there's a specific issue that you can receive further direction on that, whether it's handled here or at a different level.
But I have a few
It doesn't
questions
end
with
right
that,
there
though.
if the police feel that your complaint isn't legitimate, or there's another issue with it. I've arrested, I don't like to say this, but I've arrested hundreds of people. I don't remember anybody being happy about it. It doesn't happen. A lot of people make complaints. They feel that they should, number one, they shouldn't have been arrested. They didn't like the accommodations, the way they were, whatever, the whole process here. And they can make complaints. And a lot of complaints are, most complaints aren't legitimate for those very reasons. But there again, I can't stress it enough, there are places to go if you feel that your complaint or concern isn't being addressed.
I get that, but number one, why are they being turned away without even being able to
I
hand
don't
in a
know.
paper complaint?
Without getting into specifics, I don't know.
And number two, why do they have to go all over the place to try and file a complaint?
They go
If you
across the
can't, that's
parking lot.
ridiculous. You shouldn't have to go to 5 million places to file a complaint
You
against
don't
an
have to.
officer.
You can make a formal complaint there. We've all
No, you
spoken to
can't.
Chief Coffey. Well, maybe you should revisit him.
Maybe, well, something obviously needs to change if people are I mean, this is a large majority of people who have said to me that they have tried to file complaints and they can't. That's not right. Especially if they have a legitimate complaint. I get what you're saying, that some complaints may be frivolous, but there has to be some sort of process here, and clearly the current process is lacking. And I don't think that's necessarily a reflection of Chief Coffey. I'm just saying maybe he has his hands full. I don't know. But something has to change.
Okay, thank you. Yep.
Your name for the record? Sorry, can you say that again? Go ahead. Go ahead.
wish to continue, or are you finished?
I just feel like there needs to be an additional layer of accountability. I feel like it is not a diminish on the department or look down on police officers as a whole. I think accountability only rocks the boat of those that are not following the protocol and procedure that is in place at this time. So I'm definitely in support of another layer of accountability for the police in both, because there are issues in both areas. I deal with them myself.
Questions, comments?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. You have the one in the meantime, if you wanted to. You have that one there, I think.
Yeah, do you wanna wait to give time for another call?
Sounds like we, that one.
Yeah.
Your name for the record?
Angel Baptist Wilkes-Barre.
Go ahead, Angel.
Are we in the public
Yes.
portion?
Yes.
First, I would like to say, because you know, you guys, I have praised the police as well as condemned them in the same word. Rather in the same breath. I have to say, the 5 officers that have responded to the incidences that my family has had personally were excellent. Over one weekend, we had a family crisis where we had to call the police twice, and the young officers, and I say the young officers, they were phenomenal. And then when my mother's wallet got stolen out of her work office, you know, that officer, he too was phenomenal. But, you know, I agree with that, because the thing about it is, you know, the problem we have with our policing isn't the fact that, you know, that Chief Coffee has policy on how to file complaints, but the problem that we have is when we had when the story was it was lawlessness. And I can honestly say from experience, my mother was threatened with arrest because she asked to file a complaint over sloppy policing. And the thing about it is, we're asking questions about a handcuffed piece and an ammunition clip being left at a scene that was never secured. And, you know, we had to call 911 to come and get it because, you know, the officer who answered the phone hung up. So it's not an issue of what Coffee had in place. It's an issue that this has happened over a generation of police officers, I should say, that they're stuck in ecology. So my whole thing is, you know, we have to get beyond this because a lot of violence and there's a lot of negativity between the older officers, the soy versus the black community. You know, someone shouldn't be paid because they don't want to talk to an officer. And that's what my issue is. But like I said, the 5 officers that responded to us, those young officers were phenomenal.
Is there anything else, Angel?
That's it.
Thank you, that's good to hear. Comments?
Your name for the record?
Hi, my name is Lois Grimm.
Go ahead.
end of your comments? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Take care.
Comments? Okay.
Your name for the record?
John Hawkey.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Hi, first, I'd like to say I'm disappointed that you guys voted no for the Facility Review Board. I think that that's something that, you know, that, next time that there's a meeting where people are actually there, I think that you should put it up again, because I think it could be hard to vote no when there's actual people that they, it seemed like many people were opposing it. I'm gonna just go with something I've been saying every week, or every meeting that you guys have. Guys should be having meetings outside in public, like I said. Like you guys are supposed to have this meeting with people, and you took advantage of the COVID situation and didn't have a meeting outside. You guys had a meeting outside in March. You guys could have did the same thing and had a meeting outside. I'm just really disappointed. I really don't think you guys want to hear from the public, especially when people are protesting, when people are complaining, not just putting up that proposal. I just think you guys really want to hear from the people. It's easier for you guys to hear from on the phone. I don't know, just really disappointed. I really think you guys should be looking to, have these meetings outdoors, because indoors doesn't seem to be safe. Another question I've been asking that I haven't got answered. What does, having the police being parked in random spots how's that make the city any better? How are they doing anything doing that? And, a few days ago, I seen at least 2 officers around talking to people without masks. Do we not have masks, or are we not having our officers wear masks? That's all I have.
As we had discussed, we had planned on having a limited number of people here this evening, but that changed dramatically yesterday with the governor's latest order, so I can't answer about the police officers without masks. I don't have any knowledge of that, but I do see them wearing them when they are interacting with the public, but there's no one here from the department that can answer that question. I'm sure they wouldn't have answers, but if John wanted to get some more specifics, to give us specific information, but I don't have any knowledge of that. Anything else on that? Thank you. We did have one more email that did come in on general comments. Mr. Ryan, if you wanted to read that one while we're waiting.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, this is from, came into Kathy Payne this afternoon at 1:30. It's from Heidi Shovlin. Heidi states, hi, I'm messaging in regards to permit parking for the lower section of Almond Lane. My husband and I have lived here 24 years now. The past few years, people have passed away and their properties have been sold, so now we have lots of bigger families moving here and they have multiple cars. I feel it's not right for my husband and son to park a block away after working 12 hours. There is also people that have driveways and still park on the street. I'm hoping for a resolution soon before things get out of hand here. After Kathy received this email, she did check with Bill Harris, who oversees the parking permit program. And Bill's response was that she was told that First Street does not qualify for parking permits. There is no school or business employees taking up parking spaces on Almond Lane either. That was Bill Harris's response. So apparently she had gone to Bill and, you know, he didn't feel it was justified.
Certainly a difficult situation. We have a small street and a limited number of parking spaces. Anyone care to comment?
That street's terrible with parking. Almond Lane. And I advised Heidi to try and get a petition. I didn't realize that you have to live within a certain radius from a school or a hospital. So I told her that I would look into that ordinance to see if there's anything we could do to change it, because like she said, a lot of families have multiple vehicles, and the street, like, you literally cannot find parking at all. So I think it's something that we need to look into further. I'm done.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Your name for the record?
Jim Bowden?
Go ahead, Mr. Burden.
Yes, I'm calling about parking up on the city streets in the Heights section of Wilkes-Barre neighborhood, all of our streets up here.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I have gotten a ticket for parking on a sidewalk. Where else are you gonna park on these streets up here? You cannot park if you go up Sylvania Street, you go up Puritan Road, you go up Pershing Street, whatever street you go up, it is nothing but one-way streets, one-side parking, and hardly any place to park. And if you park up on the sidewalk, or if you don't park up on the sidewalk, you're not going to get a vehicle through the streets up here, especially on Taft or Pershing Street, Sylvania Street, Hayes Lane, anywhere up here in the Heights section. And I got a $25 ticket for parking on the sidewalk, and there were 7 other vehicles parked on this street the same time I got targeted for parking up on where it used to be 57 Taft Street. And I don't think it's right. I really don't think it was right that I got nailed with a ticket for parking up on the sidewalk. And what could be done about it? Now you're either going to make parking on both sides of the street or no parking on the street. Take out the sidewalks on one side of the street, and that way nobody could bitch and yell and holler at the street about the parking. I'm not going to keep getting fined for being up on a curb. Or I get told that, well, you're legally parked now that you're down off of it, but you can't park there because it's a turn on the curb, and people still have to drive up on the sidewalk to get around you. And if a big truck comes around here, they're not going to get around you, or, you know, they came up with all these different excuses why I can't park my vehicle on the street. So I need zoning to come up here, I need whoever to come up here and give me an answer why I can't park out here. And that's it, bottom line. Anybody got any questions, any answers for it?
I can answer.
Thank you.
Hold on, I'll come up to the phone, Kathy. Jim, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, I'll message you and I could stop by to see what is going on, like to see the situation. I'll message you later tomorrow to get your availability.
Yes, you told me that was something else that I had with you, and you never got back to me.
Yeah, I did. I never not get back to you, and I never volunteered to come to your house. This is the first time. So I will message you, and you could show me the issue, and then we'll try and get something resolved, okay?
Yeah,
Okay, I'll talk to you soon.
yeah.
Your name for the record?
Hi there.
I'm sorry?
Hi there.
Go ahead.
Hi, I just wanted to make a comment. I'm a former resident of Wilkes-Barre City. There was a man who had mentioned that it sounded like an attack on the police and, that he wasn't for it. And I don't know if you guys realize the big picture that it paints when you have a community that is entirely accountable, and transparent. And then also, it's displays synergy, secrecy, cohesion. I mean, work and it comes out of our paycheck. And it's very important that we get what we're paying for. And as a community, we should all operate that. That's how Congress works. And essentially, when you don't get what you pay for, you get a refund, or you figure out how to solve the problem. And the resolution is to make the customer happy. We are all taught that from day one in Business 101. I understand the circumstances where it's illegitimate and that's going to happen, but we are all humanitarian people, humans. So we all should be treating each other equally, whether you're doing your job or not. And if someone says yes, someone needs to take a look at that. Your job, the paid job that the taxpayers pay you to do, is to do just that. That's why you're there. That's your purpose. So I hate to hear someone believe that it's an attack on the police. It is absolutely not. It's accountability all the way around, and all those other efforts I mentioned earlier. So it's important that parents consider it that way. You are a person, and you are accountable to the person next to you, and that's why we're all wearing masks. And that exists in every facet of our community. So I really hope finding in your heart to do it in the way that I explained it. Unfortunately, I wish I could address you. I didn't get what the name was. But, you know, we're all living in this community and we need to treat each other as such and make sure we look out for each other. It's that village scenario that you talk about. We need everyone. Let's just move forward and evolve. We have to evolve with what's happening now. And that's how we all become successful can stand still. So to stop something like this is an injustice, it's betrayal and treason against the citizens, and it would not be tolerated in the district ever. So I just wanted to input that. I hope you all have a great evening, and thank you for letting me spend a few minutes of your time.
Thank you.
Couple more minutes, Jim.
2 minutes. Okay.
Anything from council members while we're waiting? Closing comments?
I just have messages still from people saying they can't get through. They're calling the same.
It'll range, and after 4 minutes it'll go voicemail.
Yeah, I don't know why they're not getting through. I've had a couple
Trying
people.
now, and it's really good.
Yeah, that's what I told them. Someone just messaged and said they're calling right now. That's what I just mentioned.
Sir, we're gonna stop you right now if you don't mind. Sir? I don't think you can hear me on it. Sir, we appreciate your comments. Anybody here on call? We appreciate your comments. We've gone a little bit over time with your call. Council members, any comments on that? That's nothing? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any more calls coming in, Kathy? Closing comments? Beth, I just have one question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
The document that we have before us here, was that at all reviewed by the city attorneys?
The city, so there was a little bit of confusion. I sent an email out on June 5th to the city attorney, the city administrator, the mayor. The city administrator stated that he would review it. I didn't hear back. I then sent the revised copy to the city attorney and the same group of people again. And then I talked to Tim Henry, and he didn't know who was supposed to be handling that. So Tim is working to review it. It was reviewed by 2 outside attorneys that are not city attorneys, but Tim is also working on it as well.
Okay, so it didn't go through our legal process here.
No, not by my fault.
To your knowledge, it didn't. Okay, all right. Okay, you have another call? Go ahead.
Your name for the record?
Sam Troyer.
Go ahead, Mr. Troy.
The 5-minute general comment, right?
Yeah.
First of all, I would just like to commend the mayor and city council. No, I guess I don't do enough of that. I'm being facetious. But I really appreciate the mayor's adamant stand on fireworks. The city had a terrible time, but I still haven't gone away completely. And I think that I appreciate his commitment to cleaning this matter up, and I know to a great extent council is behind him. I think there's a lot of legwork to be done there to finally get that legislation repealed. And I know that I have the feeling, I can't prove it, but I'm sure that some of our local legislators were voted to approve that legislation, which allowed this fireworks industry to expand the selling of the fireworks and the capacity for the higher intensity fireworks that we're able to sell those now. I think that proved to be terrible for the city, and hopefully by next year, maybe this thing will be alleviated. I also want to extend my appreciation to the mayor and council for standing behind me morally and financially for the planting of the tree at Public Square last month to commemorate the efforts of the essential and healthcare workers. And I would hope that that our momentum will not stop. I did express interest. I guess right now there's sort of a pipe dream, but I know that there's some support for you people, financial and otherwise. Financial is something else, but I appreciate any moral support we get. We're trying to plant a tree to show our appreciation and gratitude for these people's efforts in all parts of the city, all the districts, if that's feasible. Hopefully we can get together and talk about that tomorrow. I just have a couple other issues, and I know my time is limited, but I have a list here. I don't want to get to all. But James Walsh, who I'm sure 4 council members and the mayor are familiar with, a very committed American, very committed citizen of Wilkes-Barre, passed away recently. I'm sure some of you might have seen that in the obituaries. He came through several, every time I was there speaking out, he always seemed to be there with his veteran's hat on.
Chairman. Thanks for bringing that up, Sam Troy. Yes, I am working on an ordinance in the process of having legal review now. I do want to also emphasize the positive. Sam, you mentioned about lots of buildings coming down. I wouldn't really characterize that. Every individual historic building that has come down in the last 100 years have an individual story. When you add them collectively, yes, it looks like we're destroying our heritage, our history, and our culture. But they do each have individual stories of reasons why. The good news is, though, we do still have 215 historic buildings in the River Street Historic District that do have some protections, not total protections, which would be infeasible anyway. But what I seek to do is expand the River Street Historic District to include more area, mostly namely the downtown area that has the same contiguous borders of the Diamond City Partnership and our Business Improvements District, to have increased historic preservation there. From my standpoint, we're making a statement about what is important to us as a city, that we value these buildings, we value their history, and it also makes us absolutely unique. One of the things that I decry that's happening across America is if you go out, say on 315, you don't know where you are. It looks exactly the same as a state road in New Jersey, New York, Texas, anywhere. But when you drive down South Franklin Street from Academy to North, you're only in Wilkes-Barre. That is unique to us. And that's what makes us a wonderful community, and that's what I seek to preserve. So we're in the legal review process about that, and hopefully I'll have it by maybe the August agenda. I do want to make a comment about Mr. Walsh, who is one of my constituents. I see these flags here, and you know what? This is who I think of now, is Mr. Walsh. And I assume these flags are probably here because of Jim Walsh. And Jim, I have to say, the greatest testament to Jim Walsh right now is us with these flags, but the house that he sold before he went to the nursing home, that current owner of that house on Mayor Street keeps it all decorated in flags like Mr. Walsh had. And when he died, and I posted on Facebook, all the neighbors on Mayor, Bradford, and McLean were all making comments that they put out flags in honor of Mr. Walsh. And that whole neighborhood was full of American flags. And that's a great testament to a great man that Mr. Walsh was. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mayor, closing comments?
I do have people on
I'm sorry, go
hold
ahead.
that are calling my cell phone because they can't get through to that. I don't know, it's like 4 people. It's my mom, spoiler alert. Are you there?
Yes.
Okay. Say your name for the record.
Susan Gilbert. All right. I wanted to call just to say that I do support Governor Wolf's new reform. However, in addition, I also support the new ordinance that was introduced by Councilwoman McBride. With all the past serious issues that we have had in our own police department here, some going on for years that people knew about and never opened up their mouths. And with the current situation that's still ongoing with certain police officers, we need community involvement now more than ever. This does not mean that I don't respect our mayor or our chief of police, but we need eyes everywhere. And we need more to start with more community involvement and with our citizens. And that's the most important thing. We do have a say here, and we should be heard. All of us, not just some of us, all of us. And I also would like to thank Tony Brooks for his support and for his work on this and his understanding in the current situation that we're in. And I just wanted to say that. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Mayor, go ahead.
I just wanted to respond to Mr. Troy. Sam, I believe we're meeting next week to go over the verbiage for a plaque. The most recent tree that was planted on Public Square, we're going to be installing a plaque on there acknowledging the healthcare heroes that have worked through the COVID situation for us. And we are going to be working with the Tree Commission, myself and my staff with the Tree Commission. The goal is to plant a tree, as Sam said, in each of the 5 districts and acknowledging these heroes that have brought us through this terrible pandemic. So, yes, Sam, it's in the works. It's very much alive, and we're going to get this done, and we'll have a tree dedication in all 5 districts. And thank you for your support as the head of the Tree Commission.
Thank you, sir.
I said they could call myself in if they want, but 4 people who messaged me, but they are still trying that line. Maybe just wait a few minutes and see.
They cannot get through on the regular line?
Someone's gonna call me now. Hi, state your I mean, like I said before, the main thing with the Civilian Review Board is to provide an avenue for civilians to be able to file complaints, and to know that they're going to be investigated. The board has investigative power, they have subpoena power, and they require police, they require the police to work with them. So, and they also have an advisory component on the board too. So like I said before, if there's any policies that they would like to see put in place, they could advise the police department to put those policies in place. Even if the Civilian Review Board found that there's an allegation of misconduct, because of the way the charter is written and because of limited powers that we are able to give to the board, I would like to give them more powers. They could only advise on punishment or any type of, you know, if an officer should be suspended or anything like that, they can only advise the chief on that. They can't issue that themselves. So that's also important to note, I believe.
Mr. Carr brought up a couple incidents that over the past, I think he said 13 years. All those, by his own admission, were investigated and prosecuted. Actually, one of them is still within the criminal justice system itself right now. So it's not like they were ignored. The word corruption in that particular case, yes, those instances were wrong. The people that have been adjudicated were wrong, and corrective action was taken. They were terminated. And that's one of the things that the Training Commission is going to be working on, certification for police officers. As you know, all 25,000 need to maintain that certification to work. Central database of misconduct is going to make it a whole lot easier to lose their certification. That's going to be the power there. That certification is the key to them working, whether it's in Wilkes-Barre or Pittsburgh or Philadelphia. It doesn't matter. You need that same certificate. And that's where the governor's office has really been helpful in making that, pulling that all together. But anyway, we have nothing further. Make a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.